So Mandë and I are in New York City, which means, of course, that we're not in the same physical location. We are both socially isolating ourselves at our respective homes. But Mandë is going to be sharing her screen, and we're going to be talking through this presentation together. Thank you again for all your work in pulling this conference together. We're so excited to have everyone present.
Hi, everyone, and I'll just second a little bit what Jess said. And thank you, Dave, for pulling this together. You guys are awesome at Pocket Lab. And that was a wonderful talk from Bob. Thank you very much. We've learned a lot about viruses in general. And so we're all probably wondering why we're here, and it's not what we planned on doing. But there was like pre-COVID, and there will definitely be like post-COVID. But we're currently in what we're calling the COVID abyss. And this abyss has a significant challenge. It has disrupted the way that students are learning. In the US, 55.1 million students, and worldwide, it's over 1 billion students who are now having to do either remote learning, where their educators are coming into their homes virtually, or they're doing sort of informal learning where parents are becoming the educators. And in this abyss, there's a real challenge for those of us who practice or promote remote learning. And can we rise to that challenge? Can we make sure that the things that we've been working on actually work, and can they provide learning experiences for educators and for students in the same way that they can for the classroom, and with the same kind of impact? Because we don't know how long this abyss will last, but we do know we will come out of it. And from the talk that we've just seen from Bob, Dr. Siegel, we know that STEM is going to be important. And it is essential more now than ever for the next generation of students to understand and engage with and appreciate the importance of STEM. And so for companies like ours and the ones you'll see today, we do believe that science can and will save us. If you're listening to the news and following what's going on, there are a series of small molecules that are being tested, there are clinical trials that are happening, there are vaccines that are being developed. All of this comes from STEM training and STEM learning. And so how do we bring that into the classroom and explain it in a way that is exciting, engaging, and entertaining for students and for educators both? That's what we at Killer Snails are doing. And not just us, but everyone here today, all of these ed tech companies are doing, believe that science can save us and believe that we can use remote learning to really engage with educators and students, and now parents to get to get it across that STEM is important and we can teach it using remote access. And so our solution to how do we bring STEM into the home or the classroom in effortless ways is to use learning games. And our tagline is we try to make games that are down to a science. So we use science narrative. We use stories from nature because they're awesome, and nature knows how to tell very good stories, like snails that eat fish, which you'll hear a lot more about. But we use these narratives from nature to really ignite students' curiosity and to fuel inquiry-based learning, because the students have to want to engage with the material. And once you put an exciting story out there for them, it sort of helps to make that possible. And then we use sort of immersive techniques. So we use both tabletop and immersive techniques. Here you'll see kids looking in through the VR goggles, these cardboard goggles, to really spark creativity. And a lot of what ed tech has been is always student facing, but at our company, we also are educator facing. And we use a real-time formative assessment tool for educators that they can monitor what the students are doing in the immersive experience, whether it's VR or AR. You'll hear about our VR experience today. And they can see real time if the student is stuck, if they've answered it correctly, if they might need a nudge to get over to the next, to get into the next chapter or lesson. And it provides teacher guidelines as well. And so we are really trying to sort of scaffold educators. We're not here to replace teachers. Teachers are important, but we want to give them tools that will help them engage with students in this sort of new reality that we're all living in. And so the basis of Killer Snails is to use the science of learning when we're making our games. We use the research of cognitive scientists to figure out and think about questions like, how do we create more meaningful play? So for us, this means when we use VR in a game, we use it intentionally. We're not just using it because it's a cool new gadget and we want to throw it into the classroom and see what happens. We use it in scenes and in experiences that we think will really enhance learning and make it, specifically STEM learning, more engaging. And then how do we represent different experiences? So in this cartoon, the image on the floor to some people is the figure 8, to some it's the infinity, it might be a wave, a pretzel, a DNA slice, but everybody sees things kind of differently and everyone is coming to the classroom with their own experiences. So how do we represent those experiences in the learning games we're creating? So for example, you're gonna hear about BioDive, which is an ocean science marine experience where kids are going out on expeditions all over the world. And so for kids who are near the ocean, that might seem like something that happens regularly, but what about people who are landlocked, like in Ohio? How do we make sure that what they experience in our games feels authentic to them? And then how do we do different voices, right? So how do we represent different voices? And so in this instance, there's no monopoly on good ideas. As everyone knows, good ideas can be found from anywhere, from any culture and any country. And so we want to make sure that our games are inclusive and engaging. And I must say that our Jessica went to TED, the sharing of ideas, right? And so you can check her out on her TED Talk when she talked about BioDive at another point. So we really want to make sure that we're being inclusive in our games. We want to make sure it's meaningful and that we're having experiences that are impactful. And so what we found that works and why it works is sort of using STEM engagement. For users, when you're using VR and other things, the STEM engagement and enjoyment is enhanced. And even for learners who wouldn't traditionally come to STEM or engage in STEM, the experience of being in a VR world sort of is very exciting and unique, and it gets them more into the content. And so we've also found that STEM is also very useful for knowledge acquisition, simply because we live in a 3D world, and VR enables you to reflect that effortlessly and with the most sort of fidelity. And so STEM knowledge acquisition is able to be reflected more accurately when you're doing it in 3D. And then of course there's the social knowledge negotiation. And so VR fosters this social knowledge negotiation, basically like collaboration, that enables students to interact and engage with each other, and they get excited and want to talk about, oh, I saw this, did you see that? What about this fish? Did you see the snail eat the fish? And so that gets them talking in the classroom. And the last thing that we've learned through research is that VR is very effective at training psychomotor skills. What this basically means is you get to practice a skill and then you get feedback. So as you'll learn soon from Jessica, the kids, as they're going through the VR experience, they're being challenged to come up with hypotheses and to make models and to sort of make predictions. And with each of those steps, they're learning a new critical or analytical skill, and then they get instant feedback of how the skill is working, either from the game itself or from their educators, because the educators can see what's happening in real time. And so all of this can be very exciting, right? But it can also lead to sort of cognitive overload. You have all of this sort of creativity coming at you, in which you have, you're dealing with all of these new sensory informations. So how do we make sure that the information that the students are receiving, how can we fit that between the tools and the content to make sure that they're not overwhelmed and it doesn't become like, oh, this is too much, which leads to sort of shutdown. So that's sort of what we tried to do in Killer Snails. And specifically, when we look at these questions, when we're designing our games, our questions affect not only our developmental process, but they're also central to learning sciences. And one of the questions we start with always is, how can web-based and VR technologies be combined to enhance learning? How is it, again, can we make the technology match what we want the content to do, and to make sure that everything that the students are doing in the game is leading to a meaningful, impactful learning outcome. So we like to say learning through mechanics, right? So make sure that everything they do in the game has some learning impact. And then how can we use VR to help foster collaboration? Because as the research shows, when students collaborate in the classroom, transfer of knowledge is happening, and they're starting to cement the information, take ownership of the information, and really start to engage with the STEM materials. And then to what extent does taking on the role of scientist impact learner? Myself as a scientist, I think that it's the best thing you can be. I'm biased, of course. You think an educator is the best you can be. But when you see yourself in a role, studies have shown, again, we try to follow what research is out there, that seeing yourself in a role makes people believe it's possible. So in all of our games, we put the student in the role of a scientist, whether it's a marine biologist or an ecologist or, an astrophysicist. We want the student to feel empowered that this is something you can do, and this is not something that's unique or requires anything extraordinary. You have all that's necessary to be a scientist when you play this game. And so in our methodology, when we start to make our games in the preparation phase, we really do consult a lot with teacher advisors. We call them even teacher ambassadors. And so with each game that we've designed, we've worked with primarily middle school or high school teachers to design the games, because again, we want to try to treat the pain points that teachers have. We don't want to make something that will add to the angst of the classroom, basically. We also consult with science advisors. So I'm a chemical marine biologist, so I can tell you about the oceans and about the killer snails, but I'm not an astrophysicist. So like our most recent game we're making is Geoforge. So we're consulting with science advisors who are astrophysicists. And then the other thing, of course, is does it already exist? So we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. We want to add and to provide essential learning materials for students and teachers, but we don't want to repeat something that's already out there. If there's somebody doing it great, like this Pocket Lab, we're not going to go and do that. We're going to try to find something else to do, right? And so what we really are trying to do is trying to find a fit between teaching and content, a fit between teaching content and the affordances of our platform. And in particular, what we developed that is pretty unique to us is this platform that I like to call the trifecta of learning and scaffolding, in which we take the XR experience, where it could be AR or VR, we marry it to this digital science journal, where the students are able to have an immersive, exciting experience, collaborative group experience. Then they go back to these individual science journals where they fill in information, they get to create stuff, and you'll hear more about this from Jessica. And then at the sort of top of the apex of the triangle of the trifecta is the educator. So the educator can real time see what's happening and where the students are in the VR interactions. And they can also see where the students are in the digital science journal. And then they can give immediate sort of feedback to help, again, get that student through the material, to help them. So it's sort of like you're there with them as they're going through it, and to help them understand what's happening in the material. And so our methodologies for making our games, when it gets to testing, we do this iterative design phase where we really are sort of doing internal testing all the time. Jess is like, did you play the game? Did you break the game? Make the game break, and then tell us how to fix it. And then we also work with our teacher advisors on a weekly and then bi-weekly basis. So when we're ramping up and talking about new games, we talk to our advisors once a week for a couple of months. And then when we're in the classrooms testing, we shift to a bi-weekly where it's like, oh, we tried this and we had to change. Can you tell us how that works? Sort of thing. And then when we're play testing with students, after we have a prototype, we do that sort of on a monthly basis to get feedback from the students. Throughout this whole process, we want to be engaging with both the students to make sure that they're getting what they need from the material, and then also with the teachers to make sure that we're representing the material in a way that has fidelity for them and a way that resonates in the classroom. And we also do evaluations. So we always work with an outside evaluator to tell us just how good or how bad we're doing, because it's evidence-based, right? So we are STEM practitioners, we work in evidence. And so we want to make sure that what we're producing has evidence-based bang for the buck behind it. And so all of what we do in terms of when we get to the testing phase is very active prototyping, testing, and redesign. We're not going to put something out there until we're sure that it works and that it will meet the need, and it will meet the need well. And so with that, I'm going to turn you over to Jessica, who's going to introduce you to the awesome BioDive game that we hope that you will enjoy. And it's freely available right now for the rest of the school semester to all educators and parents and students. Jess?
Yes. Thanks, man. So this is BioDive, which includes all of the components that Mandë was just talking about. And it starts with a call to action where students are serving as scientists, and they're studying these venomous marine snails that Mandë also studies. And one of the most interesting facts about these snails is that they are so deadly, they can kill a 200-pound human, but their venom is being studied by scientists like Mandë to create therapeutic drugs for humans. Unfortunately, in this scenario, there is some sort of environmental impact that's changing their environment, that's affecting the abiotic and biotic factors in their environment. And so the goal of this experience is that students are trying to determine if it is in fact changing, what is changing, how it's changing, and when this has started, what the pattern is of when these factors have altered. You're going to see me make this hand gesture because Mandë and I aren't in the same place, so she's controlling the presentation. So this is the VR scene. There are 4 separate VR scenes, and in one of them, there's actually 3 different options you can choose from different locations. But in each VR scene, students go in, they have a very clear mission of what they're accomplishing, and they are in these VR scenes for no more than 2 minutes. Partly that's because when we were developing this for schools, we understand that not everybody has a cell phone that they can use for these experiences. We designed these for mobile VR so that it's as accessible as possible, but not everyone has one. So when we designed this, we had in mind that students would be in groups and that they would share the phones, they would just pass them back and forth. The next part is the digital science journal. Here you can see the page is asking, where do producers like plants get their energy? And so the students would then be expected to click on the sun. On this page, there are 7 different kinds of interactions. And so each time they're asked a question, and when they click on something, they find out if they were right or if they weren't right. They're given some kind of a hint to help them to get to the right step next. This is the Educator assessment dashboard. So you can see the students' progress as they're going along. You can see if they've been through pages and if they've completed the VR or not. So class-wide virtual reality experiences sounds awesome. And again, we did design this for mobile phones so that students would be able to, so as many students as possible would have access to it. And we designed it to be used with Google Cardboard, which is really inexpensive and will frequently, if you are working at a school, Google will donate the cardboards to you. However, we are not at schools and most students do not have these cardboards. And so we do have an alternative where this is what it looks like with the cardboard smartphone viewer, which it is really immersive, and all you see is the environment and you're in the center, you look all around behind you. But again, we're assuming that most kids do not have access to a Google Cardboard at home, but if they do have access to either an iPhone, an Android, or an iPad, they can use the full screen mode, and then it works as like a 360 experience, so you can still turn around. And for the people who are asking, yes, we are offering free access to this product for the remainder of the year. And it's always free on iTunes or Google Play. It's the Digital Science Journal that we are currently offering for free in addition. So this is the what the virtual reality experience looks like. In this one, students have already in their digital science journal learned about how to use different scientific tools. And so they go on this boat to take measurements of the abiotic data to see how it's changed. And here you can see there's a tracker along the bottom that shows what measurements have been taken so that they can create progress. This is the Digital Science Journal, the online part. And as you can see, there is Dr. Mandë holding the shell of a venomous marine snail. And the video, if you watch that, then it shows different snails hunting different kinds of fish. And then we prompt students to ask questions about that. You can see that the students are in the role of their scientists in the FNBI, which is the Field and Beaker investigators. So they're using that to as a hook to kind of progress the narrative along. So now we're going to try something new. We're going to try having a poll, which thank you all for your patience on this. Dave is going to set up a poll. On this page, you can see in the real journal, students can drag these Post-it notes, and there's text on the Post-it notes to kind of prompt them and provide them with a little extra knowledge so that they can use that to figure out where those Post-its would go. What we're going to ask you is which of these zones which of these zones would have whales in it? And Dave, if you can, share the poll. If it doesn't work, then we'll skip that part. Yes.
So go ahead and fill in an answer, everyone.
Yeah.
Where do you think we'll find whales in which of these ocean zones?
Give you another couple seconds, and then we'll go ahead and close the poll. All right, let's see how y'all did. How many of you remembered your middle school science? Dave, are you able to show us the results? We're really putting Dave on the spot here because
yeah, you know, I can see them and I can't see them projected. So this is what I'm going to do is I'm going to see if I can screenshot it and share it.
We're just really trying to get as interactive as we can in Zoom conferences. So
I can tell you that
if I stop sharing, then you can share, maybe.
it could be. Let me share again. Share results.
There.
All right.
Yay.
61% of you were in fact correct. It is the pelagic zone. So good job, y'all. So what would happen in the journal after that would be the students would then be asked a qualitative question to say why they believed that. Can you go ahead and close the poll, Mans? Or, oh, I did it. Never mind there. And so again, that's part of aligning to the next generation science standards. So we're going to, in the interest of time, to skip the next poll. But this was, again, that same page. We were just going to show you another one of the questions, which is around recycling material back to producers. But we'll do that. We'll save that for another time. So this is the Educator Support Guide, and it comes free with your subscription to this. And in that, it has it includes context, background knowledge, what students will be able to do, their vocabulary, some suggested discussion questions, and alignment to the NGSS. Like these are some of the headers from it. But each one has it has like a series of headlines for you to use with your students or with your students remotely. We also ask students to make predictions in the journal so that they will have a choice of drop-down menus as well as fill in the blanks to make these predictions based on the data and charts. And we ask them to make models of their predictions as well. So on the side, the predicted side, students dragged stickers over. They dragged over a background and they dragged over stickers predicting what they would see in the control site and predicting what they would see in the variable site. And then we ask them to revise that using their words based off of the observations. When they were observing it is when they went back into VR to see. We also ask students to collaborate on answers. So as I mentioned, they each go to different locations. They can choose whether they want to go to the Eastern Pacific, the Eastern Atlantic, or the Indo-Pacific. And then based on which one they chose, the abiotic factors varied, the changing abiotic factors. And so they can work with partners or based off of the chart to figure out what the patterns they could identify between what they saw and what they expected to see. And then finally, this is the dashboard, the third component. So as you can see on the first section, you'll see the students' names. And then in the second section, you'll see the number of pages in the journals that they've completed. And then in the last section, it shows both their completion as well as if they've skipped anything. So you can see that Jessica skipped page 13 and jumped straight into the VR, whereas Christopher didn't go through the VR, he just kept going. And if you click on any of those green boxes, then it takes you into the journal. Here, You can also communicate directly through the journal with your students. So they're notified when teachers leave you feedback in their table of contents, and it also pops up on their screen. They get a little red exclamation point. And then the kinds of feedback that you can give them through both chat boxes, you know, great use of context clues to determine the answer, as well as stickers. And fair warning, we really like puns. So there's a lot of things like well done or snailed it. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Mandë to summarize in our last 3 minutes.
Yes. So I hope that you have an understanding now about the BioDive experience. It's for middle school students. It's been, and as we said, it's highlighting all of the things that we at Killer Snails try to put into our games. We're using a group and collaborative VR experience. The digital science journal is for individual learning, so you can track how the students are doing. Students are able to give feedback. And then we have the live teacher dashboard, because it is the educator that's driving the experience and is the one that's going to be able to monitor how the student is doing. And so BioDive, again, because we work with evidence here, we piloted with over 836 students in New York and New Jersey before we took it on a 26-state tour, in which we did a virtual pilot with 47 different schools. And we did because we evaluate how it's going to work. We did pre and post surveys with students, and there was a 40% increase in the post surveys on how these students were able to learn these marine science content. And the best part was that 100% of middle school teachers that we piloted with loved the experience and said they would happily use it again and would advocate for us, for their schools, for them to get it into the classrooms. And now, as I said, it's free, so all of you can go out and try it. And these are some of the quotes that we got from teachers, that it was a nice way to show ocean dynamics without the luxury of being there. Again, these people are in Ohio, so they were very excited. The students were totally engaged. It was definitely, it's pretty mind-blowing. And then what the students were saying is that they felt like, they liked how it felt like they were there. And the best part was that I could see myself as a scientist, because it seems to be really fun. And that, for me as a scientist, and for Jessica, why we all started in this business, was to try to get kids to think of themselves as change makers, and that they have the power to make a difference. And through STEM, they can actually make a difference that's beneficial for humanity. And so comments like that really, really make our day when we see those in our testing. And so we wanted to end with some good news, in that I know a lot of people like ourselves are freaking out in this COVID abyss, but in terms of remote STEM learning, what's happening during and what will happen post-COVID is exactly what was happening pre-COVID, which is that remote learning had to have been engaging. The kids and the educators have to feel like this is something they want to do, right? It's not like chocolate covered broccoli. And it has to be educational, so they're learning through it. And it has to be entertaining. No one's gonna stick through a remote session if it's boring and they can't do it, right? So we've got this, right? We're prepared, and we can meet this challenge. And so what we as STEM educators and ed tech remote learners have been doing is really fit for what's happening now in this COVID abyss. And so with that, we talked to you mostly today about BioDive, but Killer Snails has a whole a slew of games that you can use in the classroom and at home, whether using virtual reality or augmented reality, with something we just developed with Google. We also have a series of tabletop games if you want to get your family away from screens. And we offered some free, there are some free games that you can print out. The Rainforest Rumble is one that we just made out for the COVID situation. That's a lot of fun. And then we also have mobile apps available. And so with that, we want to say thank you, and you can reach out to us, because we're here for you. We're here to support the parents, the teachers, the students, and the educators. And again, we want to use the evidence-based methods that we've learned to make our games down to a science, so that you can use it without having to question whether or not it will work. They've been vetted, they've been tested, and we're happy and eager for you to use them. So you can contact us on Twitter, or you can reach us by email. And so thank you again for listening.
Thank you. You who have mentioned it in the chat that I've seen. We are always looking for new schools to pilot. So if you are interested in taking part in any of our free pilots, then we do provide the software. If you need the things like Google Cardboards, we provide those as well. And we are always looking for schools. We really are focused on access and equity. So we're looking for as wide of a range of schools as we can reach. So thank you, Dave, for letting us talk.
Great. Yeah, thanks. Jessica and Mandë, I can't see you. I'm going to try to put you in gallery view here. You still have your screen shared, Mandë.
Oh, yeah. Oh, let me stop.
There we go. Great. Now I can see it. Hey, that was fantastic. Thank you very much. Really interesting. We got a couple really good questions I wanted to pass on to you. One of them, so this is a question from Carolyn. So what ages are killer snails geared to?
So it's a great question. We have a range of different products that are targeted for different ages. BioDive, we developed specifically for the 5th through like 9th grade age range. Depending on your students, if they're super advanced, you could maybe do 4th grade. And if they're covering environmental sciences later in their high school years, it could also work for that as well.
Yeah, I saw somebody said, I would love this for my older grades to teach. So it sounds like it could scale up pretty well.
Yeah, it can scale up very well depending on how much you want to share the content, how many of the abiotic or biotic things you want to get into with pH and all of that other stuff. It can scale easily.
Great, great. Another question, this is from Megan. Does calling them games affect student engagement? It's a good question.
I think it does. I think it does because we come to games sort of ready to learn, excited, eager, and some of us, the competitive ones, want to win. So you come to a game very open and ready to learn. And so we call them games on purpose because we want them to come to STEM, and in particular science topics, and think that this is something that they can do, and this is something they will have fun with, and this is something that they are eager and excited to engage with. So when you call it a game, I think naturally a lot of people get ready for fun and excitement, and as opposed to calling it a lesson or something else.
Just for my curiosity, does that dilute the way people perceive it? Oh, it's just a game?
Well, a lot of the VR ones we also refer to as experiences, more so than just games. We'll call them the game experiences because particularly with BioDive and with GeoForge, these that are multi-class period experiences, we don't want kids to feel like, oh, well, you know, it's a game and now we did it for a day, it's over, because it's not. Like, it keeps building on itself. We love the use of the word game because, as Mandë was saying, it puts kids in the mind space where they feel more excited to try things, and they are more they're more open to risk than traditional lessons where they feel like they have to either get something wrong or right. And we also have a lot of the questions are open-ended, and they also, you know, for the ones where you do have to select an answer, you can't get it wrong. Like, you can't move on until you've gotten it right. So we really try and keep it in like both in a learning way, but also in a positive frame of mind.
Right, and at a time when anxiety levels are high and they have to learn something new, if they think they're playing a game, the anxiety levels are sort of decreased, right? It's not like the stakes aren't as high.
Yeah.
You know, I have to say, the first time I met Jessica, we actually played the game at the cocktail hour after an event. And it was a lot of, I still remember a few things from it. It was a lot of fun. Yes. So I think you're right, it was really good. There was an anonymous question. Let's see, are killer snail games listed somewhere? Can they be used in isolation? So I think that means, can somebody just get it and, you know, use it as a table game?
Exactly. Yep. We like to say that we can go from the classroom to the living room. So we wanted to make games that would engage students and educators, but also families can use. And so if you go to our website, you'll see that all of the games are accessible to families. You don't have to be in a classroom setting necessarily to play them. And you can get them on, as Jess was saying, on Google Play or download it from iTunes store.